Hello, everybody. I am here today with Danielle Venables, and Danielle is an Akashic guide and soul biz coach. She helps new paradigm leaders create conscious businesses and amplify their visibility, expression, prosperity, and legacy. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. First of all, I would just love to hear about your journey and how you got into the work that you do today.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a past life, I was an accountant. I was very methodical, strategic, very in my masculine, very in the structure of people's businesses. And basically when I had my daughter, I was off on mat leave and I just knew there was a part of me that knew I was not going back to work.
Yeah.
So phase one of my journey was discovering coaching for the first time and saying, oh, I'm going to be a business coach. That makes perfect sense. And I went through this again in that very methodical, masculine, structured way, only to have literally no success, absolute crickets. And underneath that, some of it was just the way I was approaching, business as a whole as being so incredibly one way. But underneath that were layers and layers and layers of self-discovery, of confidence issues, of worthiness issues that kind of had to get dug up in order for me to get to this place.
Yeah.
So long story short, tried to launch a program, failed miserably, went into what is now a dark night of the soul. At the time, I just thought I was dying and had my first spiritual awakening. And I was like, oh, there's so much more here. Yeah. So kind of discovered my feminine side, discovered my creative side, all of that. One thing led to another, discovered the Akashic records, and it's all just kind of everything in my life. As I was on this journey, it was things were just clicking into place. And I was like, oh, I get it now. I get it now. Oh, this feels good. Oh, I understand. And so it's just been a journey of following the breadcrumbs, and in that really breaking free from all of the conditioning of what we're taught.
Yes.
Where sort of the sustainable, conscious, authenticity, all of that stuff really comes from that journey of self-discovery for me.
That's amazing. I feel like it's so valuable that you did go through a failed launch, because now that's what you help women with, launching and visibility and building their brand. And so that's just probably so helpful in your coaching now because you've been there.
Yeah, for sure. And there were a lot of lessons that came from that failed launch too, about the authenticity and about just, the embodiment that it takes to really be the CEO in times like these, helping the types of people who are here to make big differences and not just go with the status quo.
What happened, briefly? I'm sure there's a lot to this, but between the failed launch and the first successful launch that you can kind of pinpoint?
I mean, I'm not one of those stories that was I went 0 to 100K in 3 months. That's just not it. It's been a very slow burn, a very slow build. And there's been a lot of stuff that I've had to work through in the process. But my first successful launch, was only a few months later, honestly. And literally the difference was what I was teaching on. It was not even necessarily what, but the rigidity around it, or the way that I was expressing it, because I had kind of awoken to, wait, it's deeper than just how do I build a business? It's how do I express myself through my business? How do I build a business that supports me, my desires, my lifestyle? And it's so funny because at the time, we progress and we look back and we're like, oh yeah, that was just step one. That was just a stepping stone. And now I'm like, no, that was exactly what I do now, just on a smaller scale.
That's amazing. That's so cool. So you teach radiant marketing, and you say that this involves rebelling against a lot of the conditioning that we have, the education that we've received around marketing, around how to structure a post, around what to say in order to get somebody to buy, and really stepping into a space of personal power, a space of authentic leadership, and a space of radical ownership of what your body of work is here in the world. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah. So I'm not going to lie, radiant marketing for me was an edge. When it came through, I was like, I'm not a marketing major. I came from accounting, right? So everything in my brain was like, no, don't do this. But what I came to realize throughout my own journey with selling was that whenever I would follow the sales structures, right? Like, this is how you structure a sales post. This is what you say. This is the way that you storytell. This is the way that you frame your offer. It's like, again, all of that like how to stuff that we're so conditioned to. Every time I would follow that, it would fall completely flat. And not only that, but I would dread making content. I would dread sitting down and trying to batch stuff. I would be like, I don't know what to say, to the point that like my throat chakra was so freaking blocked because I could not make what I was feeling in here and what I was told to say out here match. Like, it was like so incongruent. So radiant marketing was really born from the place of, what if we didn't have to do that? What if we didn't have to make things harder than they were? And what if we just got to like trust ourselves and show up with our unique voice and express in a way that only we can express? And what if that was good enough? And so within that program, not only is it working on some of the more technical, I did teach the women inside how to like self-audit and look at their writing and be like, does this actually make sense? Am I making a point? Giving ideas on like what to say during a launch. Like, there's a lot of like tactical, technical things that they can take and implement in there too. But the core of the journey was the Akashic activations. It was working with the channel transmissions, releasing the blocks, and really just like getting rid of all of the shit that has us feeling like we're not good enough, that keeps us from taking ownership of what we are here to do and say in the world. And that's the transformation. And then the refinement of the writing is just like the little sprinkle on top that makes it a marketing program, essentially.
Amazing. Yeah. It's like channel your wisdom and then edit it to make it like sound, like it's like you said, like you're making a point, but it's so different than sitting down with a formula and trying to do everything the right way. And I think a lot of people that teach that, they found a system that, and I think we'll talk about this later, but they found a system that worked for them. And because it was their voice or their way, and then they try to sell that to the world of like, here's how to do it. But the reason why it was great for them is because it was their way of doing things. And that's not necessarily going to work for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot. I think that's a lot of what we see. I don't think that people like purposely put stuff out and are like, well, this isn't going to work for you, but I'm going to sell it to you anyway. Right. Like, I don't believe that anybody really does that, but you're right. It is about like, as facilitators of transformation, how do we help people find their way instead of teaching them our way?
Yes. So you talk about creating more flow and less depletion by focusing on your core offers. I really resonate with this concept. Do you have an example from this, like from your life or from your clients, where it was like just chaos and then they were able to really narrow in their core focus and their business improved?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just use my own example. I've had countless clients also go through this, but what I was noticing with myself, and it's so funny because I'm that person where it's like, if you tell me to simplify my offers, I will be like, no, like, don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to run my business. And so a lot of it, and this is actually my human design too, where it's like trial and error. Like, you have to learn your own lessons.
Yeah. Are you a line 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, within that, like, I kind of had to go through that cycle of depletion in order to like really catch it and acknowledge it. So I'm never going to like tell somebody you have to simplify. I do believe that there's like a point in your path where you'll know if it's time to simplify and like just trust that. But basically what happened for me is I was working with a mentor who was constantly in launch mode, constantly creating new things, bringing up stuff from last year and like, reviving it, launching the same things every year. And so because that was what was modeled to me, like in the industry at large, but then especially with my close mentor, I kind of got on that hamster wheel and I was like, okay, this is how you build a bigger, more successful business. And what happened, especially when you're in this space of like, you may have your core offers, but sometimes they get a little bit neglected when you're constantly trying to create something new.
Yeah.
So what was happening is I wasn't focusing enough on my core offers to build that foundational income the way that it wanted to come in to support me,
Yeah.
because I was so busy creating new things. And
Mhm.
in the creation of new things, I mean, I'm sure you know what it's like. You're creating new emails, you're creating new marketing, you're creating new copy, you're creating the course content, you're educating your people for the first time about what this offer is about, who it's for, why they want it. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot of heavy lifting energetically.
Yeah.
So when I realized, oh, I'm tired because I've been doing this over and over and over again in creation mode for a year now,
Yeah.
I was like, hang on, like,
Wow.
what if? So then I actually looked at the potential income versus the real income
Mhm.
of my core offers.
Mhm.
And I was like, I could be 3 to 5 times further ahead if
Yeah.
I doubled down on these and
Yeah.
like really filled them and really like
Mhm.
put the love into them, because they're already there, they're already built.
Yes.
And I think that's such a common thing, like as creatives too, we're just like bored of our old creation.
On to the next, on to the next.
Yeah. So it's an easy trap to fall in, which is why I talk about it, because it's not like right or wrong. It's just like paying attention.
If you were to go back and do it over again at the very beginning of your business, would you start with like 3 core offers and just focus on those? Or would you have the year of like creation, 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 and then start to focus on the core?
I think from a personal, I mean, obviously, like I had to go through my process to get here. So I honor and respect that like hugely. But in hindsight, if I had just simplified with some core offers and then like given myself little spaces and little pockets of creativity within that,
Yes.
that little bit of structure probably would have been more supportive for me in hindsight.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And I think this is the perfect segue into my next question. You were talking about how we can like dilute our potency by constantly being in creation mode. Which I would love for you to talk more about the importance of like the cycles of creation and rest and kind of how to build that into our life.
Yeah. Oh, where do I want to go with this? Okay. I've got a few thoughts. The first one is definitely like, you know, I speak on radiance. My handle is literally like the radiant soul coach. Like it's related to that radiance. And what radiance is it's that energetic well within you being full, being like ample, right? And when we are falling into the cycles where we are like depleting ourselves, depleting our life force with the creation, we're actually killing our radiance. Well, radiance is what attracts people to us. Radiance is that feeling when someone walks into a room and you know that they're there, right? So that's something with that creation piece that is so important to remember. It's like, if you're depleting yourself, you're not magnetizing. So you're not getting the same results if you're in depletion.
Yeah.
When it comes to the cycles of creativity, I mean, everybody has like their own unique flow and there will be ways that things will work. I know personally, as a mom, as somebody who, you know, has kids home in the summer. Well, I have one kid home all the time, but you know, my son's home in the summer. I go down south, I visit my family. Like we actually just basically live there all summer. So I'm, you know, enjoying my in-laws. I'm enjoying the beach. I'm enjoying the mountains. I'm hanging out with friends. There are certain seasons, right? Whereas like in the fall, I'm more grounded. I'm at home. I'm, you know, a little more cozied up. Through the winter, I'm more like introspective. I'm like a little gentler with myself. In the spring, it's that full bloom energy, right? Like I think a lot of us generally feel those things with the seasons.
Yes.
So I'm not going to be like, oh, sync with the seasons in like that cookie cutter way, but you can start to pay attention to what your energy does throughout the year and sort of plan. You can plan launches around it. You can plan what you're going to, you know, create and release. And what starts to happen too is because we're all on the frequency of these like ebbs and flows, it's like, it'll be the right time for your people too.
Wow.
Right.
I never thought of that. That's so true. Everyone's on this cycle of ebb and flow. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and like, if you think about it, like, you know, I hear a lot of people say like, oh, my sales slow down in the summer.
Mhm.
And why is that? It's because we're all outside in the sun, maybe having a margarita, like whatever's going on. People want their freedom in the summer.
Yes.
And so when I look at the types of offers that I will put into the summer months, they're more spacious. They're more, you know, it might be Voxer only. I have VIP weekends that I'm doing where you can come hang out in paradise with me for 4 days. Like those are the types of things where it's like, come get transformed over a weekend and like make a vacation out of it. Like how yummy is that for like the summer vibes?
Yeah.
Where in the winter, it's like, all right, well, I'm in my house with my hoodie up over my head anyway. So let's sit on a Zoom call, right?
Let's get to work. That's so true. Nobody wants to be stuck inside on a Zoom call in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, I feel like that's so supportive. So you talk about mentorship and you teach that when you work with a mentor at the level of energetics, you work together on finding sustainable, beautifully aligned, expansive, and customized strategies that you can actually take and implement since you co-created them together, versus working with a mentor to learn how they did it, which is kind of what we talked about earlier. And then trying to make their strategy work for you. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Yeah. I think that there is like this, there's this desire right now in the collective, and I'm seeing it more and more, where it's like, I mean, I think a lot of us are just like little rebel souls and we don't want to be told what to do. So there's like that piece, but then there's also the piece of like, you know, I've played even with AI and been like, you know, explain to me how I can build a 6-figure business in coaching with some core strategies, and it'll spit out strategies at you.
Yeah.
Like the reality is it's not the strategies that we need. And yet we think that we need someone to show us how to do it. But really it's all that underlying shit, right? Like if we go back to the start of my journey and every phase of the evolution since then, it's like, it's the limiting beliefs. It's the, am I good enough? It's the deeply rooted, like, I can't do this. It's the freaking out when you get really big and really visible. And then you're like, nope, can't do it. And you get sick or you hide or you revert back, right? Like it's all of those pieces. It's the past lifetime when you were burned at the stake. It's all of those things that make it not feel safe to be successful. It's the ancestral healing. It's all of it, right? So yes, the strategies get to feel really good and supportive. Yes, I've been in spaces where I've been taught strategies that would have me working all the time.
Yeah.
And I had to dismantle that and make my own. But the thing is, I couldn't find a mentor to hold space for that.
Yeah.
So I would get on calls and I would want to talk strategy, and instead they would just tell me what to do. And so I had to hold that space for myself. And that's why I'm so passionate about, like, it's not the strategy. Any strategy can work. Any strategy will work. It's literally just finding the one that works for your lifestyle, that works for your flow, that works for your offers, that works for you energetically, that feels good. Yes. And then the real benefit of the mentorship layered in there is holding that space for the energetic evolution.
That's amazing. And so is that something that you do for your clients? Help them find an individual strategy that works for them?
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing that I love about like having gone to business school is like my mind is so far expanded. Like I just think in terms of income streams. Like it's ridiculous. You can ask my friends, they'll like say something and I'll be like, oh, there's another income stream. Like as a joke. But it's like my brain just like intuitively picks these things up. So it's like very outside the box in terms of how to build.
Yeah.
But it really is like, how can we look outside of what's being done already? Can we look outside of the coaching industry? Can we look at the bigger, broader space of like what can work? And I say coaching industry, but like I work with an artist. It's like, can you look outside the art industry? She's like, well, this is how it's done. I'm like, let's expand that, right?
So much of that. This is how it's done. So like, don't reinvent the wheel, but it's like, why not?
Yeah.
Maybe I want to reinvent the wheel.
It's so funny because I keep getting down. It's like, you're here to revolutionize the industry. And I'm like, well, yeah, I knew that. But like, it just keeps like showing me like how big it's getting. And I'm like, oh my God, we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, totally. I feel like this is so helpful because it's not like you leave the strategy out of it. It's just like, don't follow my strategy, find your strategy. Because I do feel like the energetics are probably like 90% of it, but we do need the 10% that's strategy. But you're right, we have to find our way. And I feel like for a lot of people, like I'm in the trial and error phase of strategy right now, where I'm like, well, maybe I'll try this. Well, maybe I'll try this. And I am finding what works for me, but you probably save people a lot of time by helping them kind of nail that down. And then they just have to implement.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we co-create together. And like the other thing that I love about the spaces that I hold is like, especially being the 3 line, it's like, I get it, take it and try it. And then, you know, we'll reassess, we'll reevaluate. Is this business structure really supporting you? Is your launch strategy really supporting you? And we take that feedback and we refine and we refine. So, I mean, it does save them a lot of time and they tend to like get those results quicker, but also how safe they feel to grow in that process, because it's not, okay, you tried this strategy, now you have to stay with it forever. It's very much like, all right, here's the feedback. Let's pause. Let's look back on what worked, what didn't. And like having that space held to really find your answers.
Yeah.
Not only feels good in the growth, but it's also, it's just a different like energetic calibration to like how much you can trust yourself to change things up. And it's not from that place of, oh, it didn't work, I'm throwing it away, but it's from like honest place of reflection.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's helpful to be in the collect, like in a group of women where everyone's doing big things and everyone's like so supportive. And then you just feel kind of held in a different way. And like you said, like it is safe for me to be successful because I'm surrounded by all of these other people who get it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a whole conversation there.
Yeah, for sure. We could talk about that for hours. So you talk about how the ability to get client results is so much more multidimensional than the ability to get your own results. And I love this. I feel like this is a really important thing to talk about because this goes back to what we were already kind of saying. It's like, you can find what works for you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for the other person. So how do you hold your clients in that process of how do you take your own lessons and share them, but then also help your clients find their way to get their results?
That's to answer the how. I'm like, oh God,
you don't have to say how, but just like tell us more.
No, yeah, it's that again, like I'm able to read and pick up and tune into energy so easily that I make suggestions. But the way that it's done, the way that it's facilitated is, I mean, obviously we do a lot of the healing work. We go into the Akashic records and stuff too. So I know where you're at energetically, like down to a T, which helps bring in those supportive aligned actions, any strategies, any structures, things like that. But the biggest thing is like holding space for, well, how would it feel if? And I feel like this is like a humbling that as coaches, anyone who's listening to this, if you're holding space for someone else's evolution, if you have a suggestion, if you have an idea, there's so much power when you make that suggestion. If you're like, how would it feel if, or what comes up for you when I say blank? And by holding that space, again, it's like, you're still doing a little bit of that business consulting, because we do cross from coaching to consulting quite often in business, but it's still like putting them in the driver's seat. It's still holding them to then see what comes up for them. But then intuitively, when they respond, I'm able to see, okay, is this a limitation? Is this an upper limit? Or is this actually not aligned? And I'm able to like hold them in that too. So I think like opening my channel is like probably part of that transformation that needed to happen in order to do things the way I do them.
It's very intuitive for you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's the best way, in my opinion. So you said that financial wins for the actual mentor that you're wanting to work with is not the be all end all of what someone is actually capable of facilitating for you. How can we tune out all of the noise on the internet and be really discerning when hiring a mentor?
I love that question. Because even 6 months ago, I probably would have said like, if someone's exclusively focusing on the money wins, which I still kind of stand by that. It's like, if someone's exclusively sharing the money wins, you know, let that red flag be seen a little bit. Like, to me, I'm just like, it's so much more than money. So if someone's only talking about money, and they're not talking about like the emotions behind money. They're not talking about the energetics behind money. They're literally just like, these are the results that I'm getting. Like, look at me. Red flag, personally. Like, that's pretty cut and dry. In terms of the deeper discernment though, it's like, you want someone who cares about who you're becoming as a person. You want someone who's invested in not only your financial results, not only your business results. Like, of course, that's a big thing. That's why we invest in our business, is to get that return. But we need to be able to see the bigger picture. So for me, I sit with like, if they weren't promising me this money, like, would I want to hang out with them twice a month? Would I want to hang out in Voxer with them? Would I go for coffee with them? Like, there's so many different like energetic checks where you can actually tune in to your heart, to your gut, where whatever your authority is there. And really just like check in with like, is this shiny object? Like, if I take money off the table, do I still want to be around this person? If I didn't believe that they could give me something that I can't give myself, would I still want to work with this person?
What are your thoughts if you had a certain budget that you were able to invest in coaching, on doing like a big year-long program where you get access to all of their content, versus like maybe going with a little bit lesser known coach, but getting one-on-one mentorship? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I think that some of those programs and systems, like I know a couple people who run them, who aren't like big names, who actually get like really beautiful results. And so I think like there is space for it. The thing you need to get really real with yourself though, when you're looking at investing in something like that, or even like group versus private,
right?
Or bigger group versus private. If there's like 4 people, it's whatever, but is like, how fully am I going to show up to be seen? You know, am I that wallflower that's never going to raise my hand for support on the programs? Going to have my camera off on the calls and be like, just kind of taking from other people's lessons. In which case, one-on-one is absolutely, in my opinion, one of the most powerful things, because you can't hide from being witnessed. Again, it's that visibility thing, right? So you can't hide on one-on-one.
Very true.
I love the one-on-one for that, because I'm the wallflower. Like, honestly, in group programs, I've always been a bit of a wallflower.
I tend to be the wallflower, and I also have a very busy schedule. So it's like, I can't make the live calls a lot of the times. I'm watching the replays. So yeah, I think that's really sound advice.
Yeah. Oh, I'm totally the person too. If I miss the live call because I can't make it, getting me to watch a replay is like, I don't do it. Like,
I love the replays. I do watch them, but I was just in a year-long thing, and I didn't ask one question because my schedule is booked a month out, and the schedule for the calls doesn't come out until whenever it comes out. And I'm like, well, I'm already, my calendar's full clients. So, you know, I think, but I did find a ton of value from that year. And I'm so grateful that I did it. And in looking to the future, I'm like, I wonder if like one-on-one might be more appropriate for me at this stage that I'm in.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things, like, you try both too. Like, I did group.
It works.
I'm at like 2.5 years in business, I think. And I did group for the first like literally 2 years. Like, it wasn't until last year that I was like, okay, no, I'm actually going to work with someone privately. And part of it's just because like you take some group programs and you're like, oh, that's not the person. Like, but having that one-on-one support, and again, the right kind of support, knowing what you need, having someone who can hold that space, it really does change things, even if it's like a short stint. And then you can decide, okay, do I want to go into a mastermind where there is more like dialogue and like higher level conversation and brainstorming and that kind of stuff? Or do I want to go back into learning mode in a group program? Or do I want to keep working privately? But I think one-on-one is something that everybody should experience in their first even like year to 2 years of business, if they haven't already. Because someone's focused on you and your business, and like you said, like your unique strategy that's going to work for you, where that's impossible in a huge group. Well, exactly. And like a good coach should be like quite hands-on in your business. Like, they should know what you do, what your revenue streams are, how those things are going, when you're launching things. Like, they should be involved enough that like you actually have somebody like rolling their sleeves up in your business with you.
Yeah.
Where in a group situation, a lot of it is like, oh yeah, like how's your launch going? And you're like, oh, I just did my challenge. And they're all like, yay. And then you move on.
Exactly. Oh man, this is a great conversation. So something that you help your clients with is anchoring in high income months and then expanding their capacity to hold more. And I think we can all relate to having like a massive income month and just feeling like that's never going to happen again. Like, I don't even know how I did it that time. So can you talk a little bit more about how we can anchor that in and how you help people with that?
Yeah. So I actually, that specific post that you're referring to was a very specific client that I'm working with right now. And she celebrated her highest cash month to date, which was like a huge celebration.
Yeah.
And right away, she had the self-awareness. She's like, how do I do it again next month? Like, she's already like, I'm going to have to hustle. I'm going to have to work hard. I'm going to have to. And so thankfully, like, she leaned in because she's been in my world for long enough. She's like, okay, I feel this programming coming online. I don't know what to do about it, but I feel it.
Yeah.
And so we were able to like, just kind of look at it and break down like the key energetics of like, not only what was going on in her life, but how did she call that stuff in? And it was actually one of the most easeful months of her life too, in terms of her business. And so right away, I'm like, okay, so do you really think that hustling next month is going to beat this month's income? And she's like, no. And I'm like, okay, so like first things first, can we be okay if it's not the same or higher? Like, do we need to hold ourselves on this like month over month trajectory, or can we look at year over year? Can we look at a 6-month trend? Can we like zoom out, look at the big picture, know that the growth is inevitable, and then just work on the energetics underneath that, right? And so that's what we did. We kind of like took that step back. She was going to run like a massive sale, and like she sells physical products. So when she runs a massive sale, her profit margin is like minimized, right?
Right.
Like, there's
Right.
a cost of goods.
Yeah.
So, you know, we looked at stuff like that. She's like, oh, I'm just going to do like a bunch of volume. And I'm like, okay, but are you like energetically behind that? Or is that like a scarcity thing because you want to do this volume of sales?
Yeah.
And she sat with it. She's like, no, you're right.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, it's being okay with like, it doesn't mean anything if I have my highest month and then it dips a little bit and then it goes back. Like, that's like it's a normal part. Like we say like, oh, get off the roller coaster, get off the roller coaster. And that's true if it's a money pattern.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, income fluctuating, like I've got payment plans ending next month. I know that my income could drop, right? That's just a reality of business. We're not always going to be on a month over month higher trajectory.
Yeah.
So we need to be okay with watching that drop without it sending our nervous systems off the deep end and without making it mean anything about the viability of our business and what we've built.
Totally. Do you advise that people start right away with a scalable offer, like a group program or like an evergreen program? Or do you feel like people can start with one-on-one and then transition, or both, or what are your thoughts on that?
I've actually been sitting with that question myself, because again, that was something when I started my journey, my coach was like, fill out your one-on-one and then you can build a group program based on like basically what you learned running the one-on-ones. And I was like, fuck that. I'm going to do
a lot of people do that too.
And so I started with group, and obviously, you know, I had a failed launch. And then after that, you know, I did have launches that were like really small, and it was still a group program, but it was like a smaller scale thing, which is what I was ready to receive at that point in my life. But it just, I don't think that there's any right or wrong way to do it. Like, you know, I've got a client right now who is like so into building a membership. She's like, I just want a membership. I want to like do women's circles like monthly. And like, you know, she's got these modalities that are like perfect for that kind of setting. And she's like, you know, I really don't want to have to be on calls all the time. I don't want to have to work with a bunch of one-on-one clients. And so she's like building out different legs. We actually like structured her membership in a really unique way that I haven't seen before, where it's like, she's able to just kind of like play, and she's killing it now because she was able to do things her way. where most people are like, you have to do one-on-one and then you do a scalable group program and then maybe think about a membership.
Once you have like thousands and thousands of followers, then you can think about a membership. That's what most people would say. Yeah. If you're not in alignment with the one-on-one, you're not going to sell one-on-one. So
no, and then you're like waiting for permission to do the thing that you actually want to do.
Yeah, I love that. Ooh. So you teach that when we are continuously moving from a space of I need it to be desirable or I need to learn how to make something irresistible, like in referencing our offers, we're not operating from our personal power. We're not operating from our creative power. We're not operating from our intuitive power. And you teach that we need to be operating from our authentic truth. And I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of like, just not necessarily following the conventional formula for like how to write a post that sells or whatever. But how can we do this? Like, how do we trust that like the information that we're channeling is the right information and let go of the need to like try to make our offer sell and just trust?
I love that question. The biggest thing is cultivating your ability to hold. Yeah. And this is something that can be so challenging and requires so much like personal work in the process, especially when we're existing in this bubble of, 6 figures in 6 months and, 10K months this and 50K months this and multi-million-dollar businesses. Like there's so much online, there's so much noise, right? And that almost always activates some form of comparison on some scale, right? When we really focus on sort of closing off access, like energetic, like I'm just not even available to read stuff like that anymore.
Yeah.
Not from a place of like, I don't believe it can happen, because I absolutely do. Like, I know that it's possible. Yeah. So I've anchored in that knowing. So those posts have served their purpose for me. Now I stay in my lane. I don't consume shit like that because I don't want to know how somebody else did it or what somebody else is selling. I don't want that to taint the work that I came here to do. And I think like when you're on that sacred path, it's just never going to quite feel right if you're not staying in your lane. Like it just, there's always going to be something that just feels a little bit off, that you feel a little bit insecure about. There's like that little bit of imposter syndrome. And it's like the more authentic you can be, the more real you can be, the more those types of feelings dissipate. Now, that being said, when you see people having these successes and maybe you're talking about something that nobody else is really talking about. Prime example for me was the energetics. 2 years ago, I was talking about these same theories. I had this come up again with radiant marketing, right? I'm like, who am I to make a marketing program, right?
Yes.
And like, is it even a marketing program? Like I had all these stories because the way everybody else does it was so radically different. What was coming through me. And it really is that place of holding, that place of knowing. And as visionaries, as leaders, like we're able to pick up, whether you realize it or not, you're able to pick up where we're going. You're able to pick up the energies of like what people are actually needing, where the next phase of the evolution is for the collective. And trusting that takes some work. It takes some awareness. And it takes some tenacity and some stubbornness, honestly. Like I kind of joke that I can't fake anything. So even if I had sold what everybody else was selling, like it just wouldn't have worked for me because I'm just not that person. But part of me is like, well, maybe I could have just taken the easy route instead of like waiting for people to catch up with what I knew my message and mission were.
Yeah. Because you were ahead of which is where you really do want to be in business, I think. But I think it can be frustrating when you're like so far out in advance of like where the collective is headed that people don't even get you yet.
Yeah. So it's learning to hold. Like it's literally just learning to hold. It's like, how true do I know this to be? And I just got chills even saying that. It's like, just let yourself trust it. Let yourself trust that, like there's that deeper knowing there, Yeah.
I feel like that's so helpful. We can trust ourselves. And I feel like for those of us that are our business, when we're doing this kind of work, our business is our calling. And so we can trust that if we're following our calling and we're just tuned into divine guidance, that we don't have to know the big picture. We can just know the next step, and we take that step, and then we know the next step, and we just have to walk in faith, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and trusting that not everything's going to work out, and that's cool too.
Yep. Like you said, trial and error.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And some things you just have to do them and see how they felt. And then you're like, never again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's okay too. That's all part of the process. There's no mistakes. I'm going to quote Bob Ross here. There's no mistakes. There's only happy accidents. Like, it's all part of the plan.
So awesome. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation, and thank you so much. I feel like this has just been packed with wisdom and value. I would love for you to tell us how we can find you and work with you, and like what your programs look like and what you have going on right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's a lot. So you can find me on Instagram at Radiant Soul Coach. You can also find me on Facebook. It's just my name, Danielle Venables. I have like a creator profile, so you can follow me there. I try to accept friend requests, but I also post my kids a lot, so I try to be a little bit careful with that. And yeah, so we can connect there. Would love to hang out. I spend most of my time on Facebook, but most of my podcast stuff gets posted to my Instagram. And then as far as programs right now, I have literally stripped my business down to the bare bones. So I have space for private mentorship work. The doors to my mastermind will be opening next month. So you can get last round's pricing if you reach out within the next month or so. And then I'm revamping my other offers. So I'm not going to talk about that right now, but all that information will be on Facebook as well as in my podcast show notes, on my personal podcast, which is Return to Radiance, if anyone wants to listen to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will put your Instagram link in the show notes so people can find you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here. It was such a great conversation.
Love
Talk
it.
to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.